Good morning, Ahmadu.
Hello?
Hello, Ahmadu. How you
Yeah, I
doing?
can hear you.
Excellent.
I'm doing good. Good afternoon.
Okay, well, so I'm gonna try to remind myself and then also talk to the audience a little bit. So you messaged me through the website, I think, and you asked about something like how am I thinking about uh, sort of cultish behaviors happening in Africa, where it seems to me it's relatively peaceful. You were talking about how a lot of poor people uh, end up as Christians or Muslims, and there's a lot of Christians and Muslims trying to evangelize and trying to, I guess, convert these people. That's what you were telling me. Um,
Yeah. Um, I mean, as you said, unlike the past decade when, terrorism was ravaging through Africa, the likes of Al Shabaab and Boko Haram, where I'm from, Africa seems kind of relatively peaceful now. But, religion has always been a big thing here in West Africa, and where I'm in Nigeria, because in the email I mentioned in the case of Nigeria, it's kind of equally divided into Muslim and Christian populations. The Christians are in the south, and the Muslims are up here in the north where we live in. So the reason why I mentioned cultish behavior was, if you remember, like, the reason for me contacting you in the email was due to the name of, this organization of yours, which I suppose I wasn't the only one who kind of, found it a bit surprising. And I think it's kind of a smart thing because it kind of makes someone curious. Why is this person who is trying to, uh, address this issue using a name that is, a phrase that is kind of related with the people who have these issues? So, like, at the end of the day, like, I really understand your explanation, but I like how at first it might seem counterintuitive. So, like, yeah, in the email I mentioned, there are a lot of cultish behaviors here because you know, contrasting with the past decade, like, religion isn't, I wouldn't say violent because it's still violent. Um, it's very, very dangerous to, especially up here in the north, to um, you know, talk about, to say something controversial about Islam or, Muslims. So let me say about Islam, Muhammad or Allah, especially Allah. I wouldn't say especially because I would like, I have a lot of things to say, so, but I think you have questions for us, so I will kind of get to that when the time comes. But in Nigeria here, we are like, there are a lot of poor people, very, very poor people, and due to the state of poverty we are having here and the hardships, inflation, like, Nigeria is in a, it's in a bad place now economically. So I have made this, observation, and I'm not the only one. Like, in our Twitter spaces here in Nigeria, like, that was a topic of discussions over this past couple of months. And it is that, as a poor person, you need hope. You need something to cling to. And Nigerians tend to cling to religion as a sense of hope. But yeah, like, it would be understandable if that is the only thing they do. But here in Nigeria, we have a lot of mega churches who prey on, vulnerable religious people, and these people pay a lot of tithe money. The sometimes they even give everything they own to their pastors and their, religious figures, in the hopes that, God will reward them with something bigger or better. And these people fall victims
which
to,
is making them
such
poor.
bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, it's making them poor in the process. But, like, it's like a gambler. Like, they will think, yeah, like, I'm poor now, but you don't see the bigger picture. Things will get better for me. And like, they tend to make their, like, as a poor person or someone who's suffering, like, they don't want the idea that they might be suffering in vain, or maybe even if the God exists, they wouldn't want, like, this is not what you want them to do. No, they want to ascribe their suffering, they want to ascribe meaning to their suffering. So like in the process of them losing what they own, they'll be like, yeah, I mean, there's a meaning to all this. Meaning, there's a reason why God is allowing me to suffer. God is allowing me to suffer more while giving away my belongings. And let me use, like, that's mostly like a Christian, like, this example I use is mostly like obvious in the Christian populations, but they're here in the north. Like, it's not mostly about giving your religious figures like money or your belongings, because I think in like I don't know how to put this, but like Islam is kind of less materialistic than Christianity. I mean, we don't have mega mosques or in that aspect, but like we have these weird behaviors here in the north, like particularly something that was bugging me back then when I was like religious, and it's still bugging me now, which is very because which is very detrimental, because compared to the north, like most of Nigerian population is up here in the north. Like, we are more populous than the south, and that is because like the north has the Muslims, and when it comes to family and childbirth, like we outnumber. This is the reason why we outnumber the south. So in terms of suffering, like there's this saying that has become sort of cultural, in the northern communities here. So like it's an Islamic saying, but it's like, as a man, if you are suffering, you should marry an extra wife, because yeah, polygamy is very normalized in Nigeria. It's not illegal
Hmm.
at all. So like they would be like as a man, if you are suffering, you should marry an extra wife, because allegedly the prophet said, the prophet Muhammad said, if you are suffering, you should marry an extra wife, and Allah will help you, not
Wow.
suffer more or not
Wow.
suffer at all. So like, yeah,
That's
I
going to
heard
cause
this.
more suffering.
Yeah, and I was really surprised that, because I heard this back then when I was religious, like during Ramadan. During Ramadan, like in around the evening time, before we break our fast, we have this usually this daily sermon, and people kind of flock to it, because people work less during Ramadan, especially the evening times. Everyone is tired. So during that sermon, that was when I heard like our leader, we call them Malam, which is, I think, an imam. Yeah, they're kind of synonymous. So this is where he was making such a point, and I was really baffled. And I kind of looked around, and like no one is really, no one is really thinking that this is just a big deal. Like, this is very counterintuitive. How can you, and mind you, like in the communities that I stay in, like especially the poor ones, like people have one, two, three wives. Some even have four. And I'm not talking like the problem with the problem with this issue is that you hardly see the rich ones or the middle class, the upper class people having extra wives. It's mostly the people living in poverty. And I think statements like this compound to the problem by, normalizing the polygamy, like normalizing the act of having an extra wife. So yeah, this sort of
Well,
behaviors, I think.
I guess if the rich people are not suffering, then they can't use that logic you mentioned, where Muhammad said, "If you're suffering, then have more wives, and then your suffering will go away."
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like here's the thing, like it's this thing where you think the truth is apparent, but for some reason, people don't just want to face it, because like this thing that you mentioned is very obvious. Like, you hardly see a rich person marrying an extra wife, or claiming the reason for his success is.
So I have a
Let's
question for
continue.
you.
Okay.
So a general thing that I know that happens across the world is that an uneducated culture, they make a lot of babies, and then the more educated the culture gets, and this applies individually, obviously, the more educated a individual gets or a culture gets, they have less kids. So like this is they see this as a problem in the West, where some countries they're not even having enough kids, and it's because they got very educated. So I got to ask you, in Nigeria, What do you think is the reason that the rich people are not having more kids? Is it because they're more educated?
Yeah, okay, like I think several factors, not just religious but also cultural, because it also applies to the south as well. Because even though they are not as populous as the north, they are still populous compared to other regions. So I think even in the north there's this, or in Nigeria in general, or in West Africa, there's this language called Hausa, which is very predominant here. So there is this saying in Hausa, or this phrase which is called, Tazaran Haihuwa, which basically means family planning. So there was a time when this term was like a slur. It was like, it was very controversial because, Nigerians, we kind of, I think historically, our cultures were highly polygamous. So when there was, like, if I remember, I think this is very anecdotal, but like during the past decade or so, when I was younger, there was this period when inoculations were being made, like vaccines, polio, and etc. And people, there was this, conspiracy theory going around that, which says, these Westerners, they don't want to see us flourish. And by flourish, I don't mean materially or financially. I think here, when you use the term flourish, it's mainly, it's referring to the number of people you have, brethren, your family,
Oh
your
man.
kids. So like, yeah. So they were saying, even in my family, like people were saying, yeah, these Western people, they put some sort of substance in these inoculations, and they are trying to make us infertile. They don't want us to propagate. They don't want us to, they don't want us to flourish, and this, etc., etc. So I think Nigerians pride themselves in having kids, but
But not the
but
rich
like
people.
that was like, yeah, but not the rich people. And yeah, like I said, like there are a lot of factors, and one of the factors aside from this cultural thing is education, as you mentioned earlier. Like here in Nigeria, like the more educated someone becomes, I suppose, the more exposed such an individual becomes. So like let's say if you live in the towns or in the cities, you hardly see people with extra wives, or worrying themselves with how many kids are they going to have, or how many kids they have. It's mostly like a problem in the, I guess, in the rural places where you see people
Okay, so
who
that's
hardly,
another point.
they have,
That's another point to mention.
yeah, yeah,
I think more of this kind of stuff happens outside of cities and less so in cities. Cities, the people are in general are more educated, and in general they're also more rich.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And this is
And
across the
but
world
like,
this is happening, regardless of Islam
yeah,
and
this
Christianity, I think.
yeah, it's happening, not regardless, as you said, regardless of Islam and Christianity. But then I think, from the reasons I mentioned earlier, like, this thing that I said, where it was, if it was even being broadcasted in radios and all that, and it's like it's a cultural thing here. Like there are jokes in our communities here that where married people will be making jokes with each other, like and that's why you are sad. That's why you are sad, or that's why you're unhappy. It's because you only have one wife. It's because this and that. Like there are a lot of polygamy jokes. Polygamy is very normalized here,
So
and
it's not just a
family
joke, they're
planning
trying
is
to
in.
shame you.
Yeah, yeah, like they're trying, like it's a sort of peer pressure type of thing, like even among the adults. Like having one wife, it's seen as an emasculating thing. Like you're not masculine enough. Even while being married, like the more wives you have, the more responsibilities you
So
are carrying.
so the poor people are competing with each other for number of wives and kids, and they see it as they're competing with the rich people too. But the rich people don't even see that competition. They don't care about it. They're competing with the other rich people for other things, like maybe how many
Exactly.
yachts.
I mean, yeah. I mean, in Nigerians, I suppose we don't do the yacht thing because, well, we are kind of landlocked aside from the south. But like, yeah, the point you made is very, very important because there's this, I guess recently over this past couple of years, especially, yeah, like there was this sort of a mini paradigm shift where, you know, in the north we have these things called Hisba, which is essentially a morality police, especially in like states like Kaduna, Kano. So like they kind of go around enforcing religion, but here's the thing: in Nigeria, if you are rich, you can do anything you want as long as you are rich. Like the religion
I
doesn't
mean, you pay
apply
off
to
the
you
police,
the
or the
moment.
police doesn't bother you.
Yeah, you pay off the police, they don't bother you. Like this is even done in broad daylight. Like
I have a
a lot
question
of this
for you
stuff. Yeah,
regarding the paying off the police. Um, so I lived in Syria for 1 year, and I know a little bit about Syria. I live in the U.S., and in the U.S., the only way anyone is paying off anyone is really big scenarios, like somebody that is the mafia, or for example, regular people don't do that and can't do that. But I remember in Syria, it was very normalized to pay off people for anything and the smallest person. So, for example, you need to go get your documents handled at the government office, and you have an extra 200 liras, and you use that to get someone to do it faster for you. You're paying someone off to do it faster for you, and it's very normal. This is bribes, and you also bribe a police officer so you don't get a ticket. Very normal. Everyone is doing it. So I got to ask you: does that happen in Nigeria?
I'd say like exactly the same or even worse in Nigeria because all these things you've mentioned, I will also say that even I myself, unfortunately, I'm sort of guilty in that aspect because I guess recently or like yeah last year or last and a half, like a year and a half ago, like I kind of there was this thing I was applying to, and it required my primary school certificate and all, but the primary school I attended was no longer, they are no longer there, no longer practicing. So I really wanted, and it was a private school, so I really needed, a primary school certificate. And then someone mentioned to me that, hey, like, why go through the stress of, doing all this when you can just go to these, like, we have government schools. So why and I was told that I can just go to this government school and, pay a couple of, bucks and, someone will just forge it for me in a few days. And honestly, in less than 5 days, I got my, certificate, my primary school certificate with all my information and all. So like, yeah, you know, people do all sort of, you know, um, illegal stuff because people don't really want to see them as illegal anymore. They see them as it is what it is, like a matter of a matter of fact, like, and they don't blame themselves for it. Like they blame the government. Well, yeah, the country is hard,
Well, no, I
and we have
agree
no
with you.
choice.
I agree with you. They set up the system that way, and they made it so that if I was in Syria and I needed my document today, and and by the way, because of the way it's set up, because it's normalized, they withhold things. The government people will withhold things just to try to get you to do the bribe. So you're forced to do it.
Yeah. And honestly, that's how it also happened here. But I think with the comparison to Syria, like, we're kind of bad because I think to an extent I might understand, the Syrian situation in this context because, well, Syria went through like a war, like a civil war. Even recently, understand there was a regime change and all, which I think is a good thing. But I think aside from what happened, the past decade, which was very, very localized in the north, like a few states and all, Nigeria isn't going through any major, aside from the economic crisis, like we aren't going into, through any major, I'd say, crisis that would, allow all these practices to continue. Like,
Well, I
I
want to
think a
be
lot of
clear.
Nigerians,
I want to be clear.
okay,
Everything I said about Syria is not anything new or what happened since the regime change. What I was talking about was throughout the leadership of the two Essads for these last many decades. That everything I was
oh, I
saying
see,
was about that period.
oh, I see. Well, I suppose it is somewhat the same thing here, and it's kind of unfortunate, honestly.
Well, part of the issue is the government people don't even get much money, so they need a little bit more money, and they use the reception of bribes to help with that. Okay, part of it is,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
just the country being so damn poor. Um, of course, Syria is also to blame for some of why it's poor because of things like, well, it didn't have good relations with a lot of other countries. Part of that is the U.S. doing it to them, embargoes and stuff. But
Yeah,
um, yeah, I mean, when your leadership is causing the problem, and I think it was, then of course the blame is on the government itself, and then there's way less blame on the individuals who are trying to survive in the fucking government like this.
I
So I
mean,
don't
yeah,
blame you.
but I mean, let me make this point. Like, there is also this, thing going around about yeah, we all know that the government is bad and all, but even on social media, if you check, the Nigerian social media, like you hear things like, yeah, the government is bad, but if I happen to have the power they have, I'll also do the same thing, this and that. So it's just that no one is trying to be optimistic about stuff, or no one is trying to, change stuff. I mean, there are a couple of people who are really trying to do their best, activists and all, like trying to do what they can to change stuff. But I think this is the reality of the situation right now.
So something I didn't understand, and I don't know any history about Nigeria or much of Africa really, except for maybe North Africa, in its relation to the Arab,
Yeah,
situation. But so you mentioned Boko Haram and a second thing, but you said it's old news, and they're not really affecting you now. So what made them go away? Why are they not a problem in Nigeria anymore?
okay. Well, Boko Haram is old news, but I mean, Boko Haram is kind of no longer a threat to Nigerian communities, but they kind of metamorphosed into something different. So when Boko Haram was, I think it was like around 2015, with the ISIS situation and all, like they pledged allegiance to ISIS. But like
Oh, I didn't
a
know
lot of okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. The leader of Boko Haram, Abubakar Shekau, he pledged allegiance to al Baghdadi now. So like he was also crazy. I think crazier than Baghdadi. He just didn't have the same power. But it was around that same time, yeah, when that was happening. Like a lot of I guess unlike the Arabian fighters and I guess ISIS and all, like for a lot of captured Boko Haram members here, like it was found that a lot of them like couldn't they claim to be fighting a religious war, but a lot of them couldn't even recite Surah Al-Fatiha, which is like the like a very common thing when it comes to
it's
like
the most
Muslim,
commonly memorized surah of the
yeah,
Quran. Yes.
yeah, yeah. A lot of them, like when it comes to religion, like the bare minimum they couldn't do. So it was found that these people are just in it for maybe the
So what what
money.
what what
Uh,
caused Boko Haram to not be a factor in Nigeria anymore? Like, how did you guys stop
well,
them?
well, okay. I think the demise of ISIS also led to. I mean, ISIS were supplying them. ISIS and their, I guess, backers were supplying them with what they needed. But I guess with the demise of ISIS, it made it easier for the Nigerian military to kind of decimate Boko Haram. But
Did you
the,
guys
the
get
problem is that
any outside help?
I I think probably, yeah. I think because there were some I think drone activities, and yeah, I don't think we have any drones here. So I think there was like an allyship with I think the United States, but I don't really remember the details in that aspect. But yeah, but
So
as I
you
was
said
saying,
Boko Haram evolved into something else. What did they evolve into? What is it now
okay,
today?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So when Boko Haram got decimated, a lot of their fighters fled, and they kind of morphed into banditry, and also they kind of created other they sorry okay. So they morphed into banditry and also kidnapping, which is a very very big issue here, and especially in the north. And that is what they do. And so Boko Haram splitted into several different factions. There was this, I think the recent one is called Lakurawa, but they claim to be fighting a just religious war, but they are just criminals. And then I think during the earlier split, they split it into I can't remember the other faction, but yeah, I think they even had a mini war between themselves. But yeah, Boko Haram became something else.
So let me ask you. There's what I think what you were describing is the Muslims in general are peaceful. They're not the Boko Haram type. But I gotta ask you, for the people that get into Islam in the peaceful way, just for hope of, because there's poor and suffering, and they have this hope. It gives them hope. You said, that they're gonna get rich later, something like that. If they got in peacefully that way, is there danger of those people falling victim to the Boko Haram groups and becoming one of those non-peaceful Muslims?
Well, like I said, Boko Haram when it happened, they were mostly plaguing, I think, two, three major states. The biggest was Borno, but like it was very localized in the north. But yeah, Borno is a very large state, so that's why they we have a lot of internally displaced individuals and all. But like right now, I guess no one really cares that much about Boko Haram. Like they don't have the capacity to, create terror as they used to. Because back then we suffered from suicide bombing and the likes. But now, I think no one like from the past
So it's
decade,
not
like
a
there
problem
hasn't been
anymore.
any suicide bombing. Yeah, it's not a problem anymore in that aspect.
Okay. Well, that's good news.
But
Were you going to say something?
yeah, I mean, we don't suffer from all this, but there's still banditry going on and kidnapping for ransom, which is really a big issue because recently one of my friend and his entire family, they were kidnapped for ransom. Thankfully, that ransom was paid and they got released after about 2 3 weeks, which was 2 months ago. But yeah, kidnapping for ransom is kind of still a big issue here, and it all comes down to the base factor, which is poverty. Like people here, even during the Boko Haram era, like some of them were in it for the money. So some people
Yes, that makes
can
sense.
do some stuff for money.
Yeah. Somebody was giving them a job.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. They just took a job. They don't care too much that the job involves, killing people or the organization does it.
Yeah, I mean there were some people who were religiously radicalized, a significant number of them, but also there was a significant number of people who were in it for the money, and maybe like a combination of both, like a good combination of both. But there's good money here, and radicalization that Allah is rewarding you for fighting the infidels. All this type of ideas.
Okay. So how do you like are you trying to do anything to fix any of these issues, or for you it's just curiosity for now?
Well, I think I am trying to do my own thing in this regard because a lot of Nigerians are online. I think yeah, we are online chronically and especially the youth. So I'm trying to like just like other activists in their own efforts. I'm just trying to create awareness in my own way because yeah, like regarding the point I was making back then about if you have money in Nigeria, you can do everything. People it kind of trended a couple of months back, and it was due to like an incident where, like I mentioned, the Hisba back then, the Hisba, the morality police, the kind of enforce this Sharia law and all. But I think there was a major incident that happened, with a politician. I think the governor's nephew or whatever. I won't mention which state, but like yeah, they were having a celebration, and that celebration was everywhere online, and by all indications, everyone can see that by I guess by Islamic principles, this was very very immoral, immodest, but the Hizbah couldn't do anything in this regard because, well, such individuals had power and influence. So the hypocrisy, became something that trended in the Nigerian social media. So, like, yeah, and the people who made this trend were the people who are, the activists who are trying to, create awareness and, problems like this. But, like I said, the way I'm doing my own thing, and my own thing is very very subtle because uh, I don't know if you remember, if you remember an issue that happened about someone called Mubarak Bala, who was a Nigerian that was imprisoned for insulting religious leaders. He was publicly an atheist. He publicly renounced Islam, which was, I think, he was the first person in the north to do that publicly, and he eventually was imprisoned for insulting religious leaders. And he recently, after I think 5 years or so, yeah, I think 2019, after 5 years or so, he recently got released like about 3 weeks ago. Mubarak Bala, for those who don't know him. So yeah, like it's very dangerous to speak out, but you can speak out without being direct, without mentioning. People don't really like Nigerians, especially let's say here in the north. We want our problems to be solved, like, and we want to see what is the cause of our problems, even though we kind of know, but no one really wants to hear you tying such problems, to Islam, to religion, because we have huge number of child marriages here. And my friend, I guess, a couple of people and I, we're trying our best to create awareness to this, to stop these practices in certain communities. But we have a lot of child marriages, and I believe, yeah, even though it's a cultural practice, but Islam, in a sense, kind of reinforces that practice because of the problem of Muhammad's marriage to Aisha and all. Like it's easily used as a justification for that. But then, like when you ask some Muslim, they'll be like, "No, it's not Islam. It's the culture." But no one really wants to mention all this controversial stuff in Islam, that the Prophet married a child, or Islam condones slavery and all that. As long as you don't mention religion, you can say what you want to say. So that's
So I would like to say, now that I know you're actually trying, to do something to help the situation. So in my nonprofit, I'm helping other projects, other people who have their own projects where the goals are similar and aligned. And I believe your activism, your project is aligned with mine and uniting the cults. So I would like to help you uh, in whatever way your project needs help. And I guess this podcast episode, you consider this as the first way that I'm helping you. And we could have more meetings like this, more podcasts where we discuss how exactly I could help you. And like one way is I can just help you brainstorm what you should be doing and what you could be doing. And I can even help you with technical things. I'm helping somebody else with another project with technical things because she doesn't know a lot of things that I already know, like how to set up a YouTube or how to set up an email. Uh, what am I trying to say? The
uh,
various different softwares that she doesn't know that I already know how to do. Anyway, so and I have a background in business management, which is why I'm able to do this, nonprofit and stuff like that. So I'm willing to help you is what I'm trying to say.
I I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that because I don't want to give too much details here, but we are working on something that will, it's a digital platform, and we want like a lot of all these problems that we see here, we believe that what we are building will be the best way to address all these issues, because as I mentioned earlier, like a lot of Nigerians are online, but just being online doesn't really solve the issue. Like there needs to be more, I guess, intentional actions, and we believe
And more
a platform
coordination
like the one.
between all of you.
Exactly, because that coordination is highly lacking, and yeah, that is part of what we are trying to fix with what we are building. So I will definitely keep in touch. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So we haven't said much here, but I just recommend we keep doing meetings like this, and everything you'll end up wanting to do, and in whatever ways I can help, it'll happen. As an example, type thing. So very early on in this organization, Uniting the Cults, back in April when I decided to start this thing, as soon as I contacted somebody that I've known for a long time, also a friend. When I told him about the project, he right away said, "I want to volunteer." We started having weekly meetings, and 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 then after about 12 meetings, we've started a project together, separate from just the meetings and separate from. And the project was a weekly live stream. So our meetings converted. We were just planning and brainstorming things. It finally converted into a project that now we're just doing the project too. Um, and it took like 12 meetings, so it took a long time. A lot of the time we spent actually um, just conversing and about various things, and it became like in themselves became podcast episodes. So the meetings turned also into podcast episodes because we would talk about very general things, and it was worthy enough to like cut it out instead of just a meeting, but also as a podcast episode. Anyway, I just wanted to say that.
I really want to like I really this is my first time having this type of interaction for a podcast or something like that. So I'd really be down for further episodes if possible, if necessary.
Yeah, and I'm willing to help in all the ways that I can. And by the way, it's hard for you to it's impossible for you to know what ways I can help besides we have these meetings and I get to tell you, and vice versa. I don't know what project, what kind of things make sense for your project unless I hear it from you first. So the only way for us to to figure those things out is for us to keep having meetings and for that information to finally come out between the two of us. So
I believe that
let's
would be
keep
the
doing
best way
these
to go.
at least once a month. Let's have these meetings.
All right.
Does that sound good to
That
you?
wouldn't be an issue. Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good.
Okay, and maybe we'll set up like a regularly scheduled thing where it's already where we don't have to keep scheduling it every month. It's just automatic. Something like the first Monday of every month. Something just as an example.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind something like
Cool. So, do you have any more to say before we stop here? This is the shortest podcast I ever did. If we ended here,
that.
it's
I
fine. That it's short, by the
I
way.
yeah. I mean, I was like I was quite busy today. So I wanted to reach, and also yesterday. So, but like before this episode, I wanted to reach out and ask, okay, what should be the topic to be discussed? Because like I kind of wanted to structure what wanted
Yeah,
to
yeah,
say, but I kind of couldn't. I didn't. I was quite busy that I couldn't,
yeah.
have the
Well,
time
I think
to
it's
just
fine
sit
the way
down
it
and.
happened. I think it's fine the way it happened. The discussion we had before we started the podcast, that was good enough, and what we said here is good enough. This was just exploratory. We weren't really trying to achieve a very specific goal. It was just very general, and the later ones can be more like that. It's okay. Um,
Okay. I think I
yeah.
prefer this kind of format, honestly.
Say that again.
I kind of prefer this more laid back format, like
Oh, good,
it's
good, good.
more casual and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd rather do more of our work like this instead of pushing more of it to talking over email. It's hard to get things done over email compared to talking like this.
Yeah, I believe. I mean, if you notice in I think the second email I sent, I made this point where I said I had a lot to say, but I just couldn't find a way to kind of fit them into a very one, two, three paragraphs, and I didn't really want to write a lot of text. So
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
conversations like this are much, much better.
Yes, yes, yes. And email's still good for some things to communicate,
Yeah,
to like start this kind of thing rather than trying to talk
yeah,
a lot over email. Yeah. I think people do too much email talking or not enough. It's never in the right amount. Anyway.
exactly.
So, all right. Well, I guess if that's all we got today, then we'll go ahead and stop here, and I'll be emailing you probably in the next couple of days. Okay, man.
Okay, that
And
sounds nice.
nice to meet you, and I hope we do some good work together.
It was nice meeting you as well. And
All right, all right. And am I saying your name right, Ahmadu?
yeah, Ahmadu, yeah, yeah.
Ahmadu. Is it Ahmadu?
It's Ahmed, but like in Nigeria here in the north, a lot of names have you like suffix after them. Like Umar, Umaru, Nasser, Nasiru. So I just decided to use the U like an identity thing.
Okay, Ahmadu. All right, sounds good, man. Nice talking to you, and talk to you next time.
All right.
All right, bye-bye.
All right.